So listen, I've been really locked in on more of my planned out content lately, and y'all seem to really be enjoying that based on the feedback I've received from the flowchart video. Don't worry, the next flowchart should be out in the next 3 weeks or so. Please subscribe, by the way, I am so close to partner. But man, I just need to yap about BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle for a bit, because the Japan and Korean scenes for this game never cease to amaze me, and in the past few weeks, Asia proved to me why BBTAG will forever be my favorite fighting game of all time. So KGP 2025 just happened in Osaka, Japan, also known as Kansai Gaming Party. This tournament is sick, dude. I went last year, and I think this is one of my favorite tournaments I've ever attended. This is mostly due to the game lineup. There is such an interesting variety of titles that are hosted here. Advanced VG2, Asuka 120% Special, Chaos Code New Sonic Catastrophe, and even Bleach Rebirth of Souls. We talked about Vortex Gallery in my Idol Showdown video, and although I don't think these two events are complete parallels, they do share similar vibes of hosting just about anything and everything you can or can't think of. The cool thing that KGP does is that every game has some portion of its final streamed and played on the stage. Whether you're there or watching at home, you get to experience all these different titles being played by some of the best players in the world for this extremely unique event. It really captures the spirit of what makes fighting games so great. All these different people coming together through dozens, if not hundreds of different scenes, titles, and communities. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle has been a constant game hosted at KGP. Last year's KGP event for BBTAG was interesting as it was a 2v2 team tournament format. This structure allowed for a lot of captivating narratives to form, as there was a good amount of North American competition there, myself included. And there were quite a few team pairings that involved native and foreign competitors alike working together for an extremely unique bracket. After an incredibly dramatic showing and run from Team Codemaster composed of Shinba and Monkey 4012, the event ultimately was decided by the first place finishers Team Relief Doublecast, composed of Pizza Mayo, a dominant and seasoned player who focuses on screen control and cycles between a Teddy Blake comp and a Hilda Yuzu comp based on player matchups, and Nanaha Sensei, an oppressive and suffocating Esfatista player who limits the options of their opponents through constant decision-making until you're forced to sit still and hold a 50-50 mix-up. This year, however, BBTAG returned to a double elimination singles bracket, which brought forth a whopping 51 players total, featuring some of the best talent Japan has to offer. Korea was also represented in the form of Elon New 13 and Okada Arcade. How this tournament went down, though, was a bit wild to say the least. Listen, I can't cover every story or every player within this video because honestly, there's too much to highlight. But let's just focus on the top 8 for now. In winners, you have the aforementioned Okada Arcade, one of the best Narukami Adachi players in the world who's constantly butting heads, affectionately, with Elon to determine who is the best player out of South Korea. Pizza Mayo, one half of last year's returning championship duo, entering the fray looking to get things done with their signature screen control compositions. And then this is where things get wild. You have Niku, a Weiss Kanji specialist who earned their way here by beating Araki, Hyuza, and the other half of last year's KGB championship duo, Nanoha Sensei. You also have Mirori, a long-time Noelle Yumi believer who was able to overcome a hard path that ended with a close 3-2 victory over the Azrael Adachi menace Neo Garansan. The surprises don't even end here, because in the loser side of top 8, you have Ray Alucard, one of the best Hazama players who's dropped the losers by Mukion in round 2, and went on to have impressive victorious performances against Nerima, Hashimo, and even Imukion in the run back in order to qualify for top 8. Nezu, the Evo Japan 2024 BBTAG champion who plays Blitz Tank, Adachi, Naoto Shirogane, Yukiko, dude, I don't know. Nezu plays an insane amount of characters and teams. There really is no telling what exactly he used in order to get here, but rest assured that guy is a gamer. And the aforementioned Elon New 13, the CEO Otaku 2024 champion and one of the most consistent players we've seen in modern day BBTAG, and Neo Garansan, the Azrael Adachi with countless top 8 appearances, looking to chase down a big W. These two players were seeded to be in the top 3 of this event, and now they're fighting in losers round 1 of top 8. That's how crazy this tournament is. If you recall, Neo Garansan fell to losers against Mirori's Noelle composition, but Elon fell to losers in round 1 of the bracket to Hyuza's extremely unique S Hakumen team. Elon then went on to nearly sweep his entire losers run, 5 sets straight, only dropping 1 game to Hyuza in the run back in the process. Now, There's a lot going on here, and I don't want to minimize any player's accomplishments by diminishing the talk down to their characters. The bottom line is, all of these players earned their placements due to being godlike at BBTAG. They're all impressive in their own right, and I have the utmost respect for anyone that's able to play BBTAG at this level this late into his lifespan. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I could not have even come close to predicting this top 8 bracket if I tried to run 100 simulations in my head of the tournament. I mean, Midori is a very strong Noel player, and many of us from North America got to experience his techniques in first person when we went to Japan last year. And just seeing how punishing it could be to make what could otherwise be deemed as a harmless mistake against his deadly composition. Basically, the lockdown and screen pollution that this duo creates makes it a bit harder to escape or successfully defend Noel's pressure. And should you do a bad burst, DP, or just simply get hit without cross gauge available, you could just explode. Yumi has the ability to freeze the opponent, and when combined with Noel's command grab that can be comboed into, and does a minimum damage of 1,250 for whatever reason, the damage output this duo reaches gets into insane territory. However, even through experiencing firsthand what the highest level of Noel play could potentially be, I'll speak for myself when I say I don't believe it changed my opinion on the character at all. I still believe she is within the bottom tier of characters, at most bottom 5, if not bottom 3. So to see Midori qualify for not only top 8, but winner's side was impressive. His first round opponent in top 8, Niku, is also mind-blowing. Kanji is another character who is, again, on the lower tier of picks, and Niku's comp isn't even supplemented by an insane support kit of someone like Yumi or Adachi. He utilizes Weiss, who by all means isn't a bad character, but I think most people consider her to be in the bottom half of the cast when it comes to power level. Still, Niku manages to get the job done by constantly managing to keep the battle up close. Kanji's damage output poses a real threat should you allow him to get started, and Niku forces you to feel like you have to panic by threatening unblockable or close to unblockable setup via Weiss's assist call. The moment you try to escape this setup with an invulnerable maneuver, Niku can pump the brakes on Kanji, bait your reversal, and it's GG's from there, as you could potentially take an unburstable punish to death. These two players will welcome surprises on the winner side of the bracket. Gray Alucard was also a welcome surprise to see in top 8, especially given his path. I mean, he had to overcome a flurry of strong players, ending with a run back against Imukian, who plays Adachi Seth. To keep it simple, the screen control capabilities that a team like Adachi Seth can implement has to be extremely difficult for Hazama to traverse around, but Gray Alucard was able to find a way to do it. KGP 2025 Top 8 in itself was a representation of what makes this game so awesome. You have some of these menaces of the meta making a strong presence like Yu, Adachi, Yumi, and Hilda. However, you have these oddball picks that were pushed into the equation thanks to willpower, dedication, and commitment, like Noel, Kanji, Weiss, and Hazama. This game has such strong core mechanics in terms of active switch, cross combo, and the 3 assist call system, that although tier disparity definitely exists, the gap between tiers and who can win feels like it's becoming narrower and narrower the more optimal players become. The oddballs in this top 8, by the way, were no fluke. Gray Alucard ended up getting the win over Nezu and finished 5th, while Midori finished 3rd after initially beating Niku in winter semis, but falling to Niku in a close 3-1 set during the losers finals.
やっぱりここだけしてて、ここだけしてて、お前が飛んでるからあれやして、ここだけだ。見せるニック。これ倒すきりです。さあそうすれば倒すきり足りるでしょう。ボタンを押しっぱでガッツポーズをしていく。素晴らしい。
With that, the stage was set for grand finals, where we had Niku, coming from losers, rocking his Weiss Kanji looking for a Cinderella story of a finish, going up against Pizza Mayo in winners, one of Japan's strongest players seeking to seal the deal and get their 2nd straight KGP win, this time on their own. At this point of the bracket, I think a lot of players on the West assumed that this would be the unfortunate end to what has been a generational run for Niku and his Kanji. But on this day, we learned to never sleep on Niku. Wisely, Pizza Mayo would start this set with his Hilda Yuzuriha team. When you combine Yuzu slashes with Hilda's zoner to the core toolkit, it can make navigation for a slower character like Kanji nightmarish. There's a great deal of outplay necessary just to even get into your effective range, let alone landing a hit. Wise doesn't really help Kanji in the navigation department much either. Although she has some projectile support available, the tracking can be quite poor on mobile characters like Yuzuriha and Hilda. And although she isn't the worst choice for a matchup like this, she's not at all an ideal pick to try to close the gap against screen control of this kind. Despite that, Niku came out swinging and took a 2-game lead over Pizza Mayo in the grand finals. Pizza Mayo snapped back swiftly and sharply though, as it felt like we were approaching the inevitable that Kanji and Weiss simply cannot do it. And then, against all odds, it happened. After losing Kanji super early into Game 5, Niku does the unthinkable, and manages to secure a full 1v2 comeback with solo Weiss to reset the bracket.
投げには引っかからないし、ここで投げ取る。抜けねえんだろお前と。さあ1対1。おお、これは拾えないが。おお、対空のゴミが炸裂。リセットです。
Absolute cinema. From here, Pizza Mayo actually felt compelled to switch to his signature Blake Teddy team. A composition that's still centered around screen control to some extent, but has some layers of aggression and setup that are quite pesky to deal with thanks to their easy side swap potential, baked into their core kits, and even their assists. Niku was unfazed though, as they took yet another 2-game lead in the reset.
Ah! Happy birthday to you!
This forced Pizza Mayo to switch back to the Hilda Yuzu team comp. This is the comp that on paper is probably best suited to fight Niku's playstyle, so it makes sense that if you're going to try to attempt a reverse sweep at this point, this is the team to do it with. It was a grueling and intense tug of war from here on out, as Niku is doing all that they can to try to close out this tournament. But Pizza Mayo just refused to go down without a fight. Before we knew it, we were tied up 2-2. The entire tournament rides on this. Niku opens up the first 40 seconds with an insane life lead, courtesy of this playstyle revolved around calling Kanji's chair assist to force Pizza Mayo to jump, and then chasing the panic options with Rice's rapier normals to enforce the pressure. Niku also found this extremely clutch wake-up parry that honestly could have ended up being a fatal hit if they were able to stabilize the combo. But Hilda and Yuzu were simply too far apart to stabilize a hit this chaotic, so Niku opted to instead squeeze as much damage out of the situation as they possibly could. With their back up against the wall, Pizza Mayo eventually found a way to reset back to the neutral game, and showed off how important it is to maintain your 2v2 in a game like BBTAG, no matter what your life values are. Through a flurry of constant pressure, correct reads on Niku's reversals, and stable decision making, Pizza Mayo took down Niku's Weiss. Keep in mind, they are one false move away from potentially losing the set off of one mistake. But the reality is, Pizza Mayo, in this state of mind, simply refused to make a mistake. They played the matchup to its strengths perfectly, and was able to execute the reverse sweep over Niku, taking KGP 2025 3-2 in the reset after an extremely tight Game 5.
漢字は体力が多いが決まったー KGP2025 BB タグ部門優勝はピザマヨ
Having earned it and playing his heart out, Pizza Mayo earns his second straight KGP title, and deservedly so. The willpower to regain your composure at the brink of defeat in a game as stressful as BBTAG takes a player skill and mindset of a higher caliber that Pizza Mayo definitely embodies. Additionally, thanks to Niku and Midori's dedication, Kanji and Noel earned second and third place finishes respectively in what was one of the most stacked BBTAG tournaments of the year. This was a historical tournament, a special one. And it feels like it's gonna be a while before we see something like this happen again. So fast forward to a week later, Evo Japan is going down. I don't really have to do much explaining about Evo Japan. It's Evo, but it's in Japan. You know what Evo is, all right? Let's move along. Naturally, there is a BBTAG side tournament here too. There's 41 total players in the bracket, which is still an impressive amount of talent, especially when you factor in that a good amount of the players who played in KGP also competed in Evo Japan. This was almost like a part 2 extension of what we had just experienced the week prior at KGP. Now, the Korea Bros and Pizza Mayo were not in attendance at Evo Japan. However, Evo Japan did allow for some standout performances from other international talent such as Arane, who had some close sets on stream with their signature Platinum Batista team, and Nico, who made a name for themselves on stream with an impressively optimized Chie Ruby squad. Now, before diving into what exactly happened at Evo Japan, it's important to note that there were already a lot of talks amongst the NA community about how nutty of a tournament KGP was. I mean, the matchups, the placements, and seeing Kanji and Noel get that far. It turned a lot of heads. But even with that, I don't think anyone expected to see anything like that happen again for Evo Japan. Now's the time where we think, okay, surely this is where we'll have to snap back to reality and get recreated with some more familiar faces, right? But that's not quite what happened at all. After some grueling sets and pulls, we reached a top 8 spread with the majority of players that were fresh faces in comparison to the KGP top 8. In winner's side, we have Nanashi, a one-of-a-kind Lane Hyde player who narrowly overcame Neo Garansan in a tight set to qualify for this top 8, and already far outplacing their 17th place finish at KGP just a week prior. There's also Pikixu, a Rachel Batista player who tends to play things a lot slower and patient, and is even further outplacing their KGP 2025 finish of 33rd. Midori, the Noel believer, is back in the fold, but looking more dominant than before. They've earned their way in the top 8 with a 9-game sweep and no games dropped in pools. And Hashimo, the infamous Weiss Aurier cosplayer, streamer, and tournament organizer extraordinaire, who narrowly missed top 8 at KGP after suffering defeat to Pizza Mayo and Great Alucard, but has returned with resolve to overcome tough opponents like Nezu and Teruto. Loser side of top 8 presents us with Nanoha Sensei, who was a casualty of Niku's path at KGP, but got to this top 8 at Evo Japan out of sheer willpower. They dropped the losers in round 1 to Nukyong, but managed to win 5 sets straight to qualify for top 8. Also, we have Lon Bogard, another longtime dedicated Noel Yumi user who has entered the chat and has given us not one, but 2 Noel representatives in this top 8. We also have Nezu, who is in their 2nd consecutive top 8 after getting a decisive 3-0 victory over Neo Garanzan in losers. And to cap it all off, we have Nanao, a newer Aurier Igus player who has come up under Hashimo's wing and is getting their first chance to show the world what they can do at Evo of all places. So if KGP wasn't enough character diversity and unique compositions for you, Evo Japan has delivered to us Lane Hyde, Rachel Batista, 2 Noel Yumi players, Aurier Weiss, S. Batista, Nezu, and Aurier Igus. As a spectator, this is so exciting to watch. We're talking character matchups played at the highest level that we don't often get to see go down. There is usually a composition, a playstyle, or a player that is so oppressive, so overbearing, so suffocating, or so strong that it limits these playstyles from squeezing through. But here we are with a top 8 of mostly unique teams with very interesting and vast playstyles. This was inspiring to see, and you could tell that the players really wanted to get this Evo Japan title. It may be labeled as a side tournament, but for some, aspiring to be the best BBTAG player they could be is still a goal in the forefront of their focus, and it motivates wins to feel sweet while feeling losses to sting. Even beyond the top 8s, all of the players at both KGP and Evo Japan have their story as to how they ended up here, and what keeps them going. But in my opinion, the Evo Japan 2025 story is centered around 2 players, Nanashi and Midori, as they both punched a ticket for winners finals. We've talked about Midori already, so let's talk about Nanashi and his team for a second. Nanashi has played a lot of BBTAG, and I mean like a lot of BBTAG, and it's all mostly been with Lane Hyde. If you scroll through his Twitter media tab, which has hundreds of videos showcasing what his team can do, you can find a post dated back to 2020, where Nanashi has hit hero rank after playing a total of nearly 25,000 ranked matches. If that doesn't signal dedication, I don't know what does. The fundamentally solid but relatively niche composition of Lane and Hyde is something to behold as well. Lane and Hyde are both characters who a lot of the player base feels have been power crept as updates for this game have rolled out. Hyde is pretty universally seen as a mid-tier pick. He's solid, effective, and gets the job done. Lane, on the other hand, opinions on her placement in the current state of the game vary depending on who you ask. Some people think this character is bad, just like as bad as the bottom tiers. Some people think she's slightly better, and then there's other people who venture to believe she is mid-tier or a viable competitive threat. Ultimately, what troubles Lene is that she's a very dedicated point character who requires a lot of investment for seemingly lower reward. Her support potential is quite subpar due to some comparatively less impactful assists. So if you're picking Lene, you're most likely trying to build a team around her. For most players, this investment doesn't seem valuable enough. There have been glimmers of greatness that we've been able to see with this character in the past, but her appearances are very sporadic, and her representation is super slim. Nanashi, however, is a name that is virtually synonymous with both Lene and Hyde, but definitely Lene. That's a tongue twister. But definitely Lene. If anyone has ever tried to seriously learn Lene, they have watched Nanashi, because honestly, why wouldn't you? A win for Nanashi here at Evo Japan will likely not be a final chapter to their journey with this team, but it would be a hell of a checkpoint, and a powerful signal to the world that Lene and Hyde are more than capable of competing with the best this game has to offer. The winner's final set between these two kept you on the edge of your seat. Game 1 started with an over 2-minute struggle that came down to a 1v1 between Midori's Yumi and Nanashi's Hyde.
落としながら何かがあって裏になったところピアスをしまって少しこもあれ足を先に入って削っていくたまるで入って追っかけて当たっていく2枚これ減るんですめちゃめちゃ減ります9993
However, this was the closest game we were going to see in this winner final set, as what transpired after this was just back and forth, very one-sided victories for both players. Nanashi took game 2 clean and decisively, and then Midori fired back in game 3. Nanashi had full control in game 4, but Midori had the last laugh with a near perfect victory to move on to grand finals winner's side.
これは足りるでしょう倒しきり緑が駒を進める
This match set the tone. It showed what these two specialists are capable of under their best and most stable conditions possible, and both players felt like they were playing at the top of their game, but it wasn't done yet. These two would meet again in grand finals after Nanashi gets the win over Pikachu 3-1 in losers finals. This was it. Two players wanting to showcase what their time and effort spent has ultimately culminated into. You could walk by this set in the Evo Japan venue and probably see it being played on a table with a small crowd and think nothing of it. But to the players surrounding the station and the people watching at home, this means something. The set begins, and somehow this grand finals kicked off with an even more tense game 1 than what we saw in winners finals. Midori was on the brink of death with their two characters and was on the verge of losing should they make an error in their approach. Yet, somehow, they were able to isolate Nanashi's Hyde for a 1v2. Thanks to clutch defense and smart reversals, however, Nanashi took down Midori's Yumi, which gave Nanashi a significant advantage and great life lead. But, there's a catch. This advantage is only temporary. Although Noelle came in at a mere interaction away from dying, Midori had level 4 resonance available, and a ton of recoverable HP within Noelle's health bar. And there's actually a distinct reason for that. In the time that these two players were engaging in the 2v2, Nanashi wasn't actually landing a ton of hits on Noelle, or at least nothing super substantive. A great deal of damage was actually done via chip, thanks to Hyde's exist skill of making all of his attacks do damage on block. Contrary to his Under Night iteration though, the damage done in BBTAG is actually recoverable health. So you could chip your opponent down by a wide margin, but there's always a chance to regain the health back should you tag the character out, or most effectively, activate Resonance Blaze. This Resonance activation recovers so much health for Midori that they actually ended up with the life lead by the end of it. Time is ticking down, and it feels like we are somehow on the verge of seeing a timeout. After an exchange of blows though, it is Nanashi who ultimately comes out on top in a game 1 that honestly would have made me go back to character select, whether I won or lost. This is just too tense, man. Yet, both players seem unfazed and continue forward with game 2. Though it's apparent that Nanashi is fired up from their clutch performance in game 1, as they decisively take game 2 with a near perfect.
ジャイルボルテックスさあ2本目も取っていく
This performance forces Midori to go back to care select, just to regain their composure. Midori does not want Nanashi to reset this bracket. They were able to fire back in game 3, but ultimately Nanashi prevailed and reset the bracket 3-1.
勝負のリバーサルアクションでしたが、ナナシさんが決めるしかないでしょう。というわけでリセットです。
Now, perhaps it was nerves, the weight of the situation at hand, or just some unfortunate circumstances at play, but Game 4 of this set was the first instance all day where Midori seemed to be having some pretty pivotal errors. There were a few combo drops and decisions that felt uncharacteristic in comparison to what we've been seeing them do throughout the day. Going to the reset, and it seemed as if victory was slipping from Midori's grasp. A dominant Game 1 from Nanashi set the tone, and although Game 2 was a lot closer, some noticeable input errors and hesitation haunted Midori in the clutch as Nanashi took a 2-game lead and was 1 game away from becoming the Evo Japan 2025 champion. My stream and I were all begging Midori to go to character select to try to regain composure again. However, this proved unnecessary. In what felt like an in-the-moment transformation, Midori approached Game 3 of the reset looking like they had completely shaken off everything that had previously transpired. A very in-control game is exactly what Midori needed to snap back into this set, and be in a mindset to achieve the reverse sweep necessary to take the bracket. This was not going to be the case for Game 4 though, as Nanashi found this clutch counter hit Air Kuga confirmed to get a meaningful kill on Yumi, a key component of Midori's team, as Yumi is the pedestal that allows for Noelle to achieve her highest ceiling of potency, with a nearly full health Lene on the side of Nanashi and a relatively stable 2v1 situation against what the majority of the player base perceives to be one of the worst characters in the game. This looks all but done. But that's the thing about BBTAG, and the thing about people that play teams or characters like these. It's through that dedication and willpower that brings them to these situations in the first place, where you're in grand finals of Evo Japan with what appears to be unthinkable and unbelievable circumstances. So if anyone is going to be able to pull this comeback off, it's Midori.
どこまで行くんだこれは。芸術買って芸術買ってフェンディルでさあラストのラストうわー
And just like that, we're at Game 5, because Japan has been notorious for cranking up the drama for these brackets and pushing us to final game situations no matter what. Unfortunately for Midori though, this is looking like one of those one-sided Nanashi games, as Noelle goes down quite early in the game. Yumi, although a top-level support character, isn't actually all that impressive or well-equipped for comebacks. If Yumi finds a hit on you, she's able to do a ton of damage, but there's some issues with this. One, it could be difficult for her to find her way in on her own without utilizing tools like EX Snowbirds, which would do some beyond respectable chip, but at the end of the day, the main goal is to find a hit, and this is eating away at your resources. Two, if she finds the hit, her routing takes a bit of time to execute. You don't really want to cut the combo short because her damage potential is so high. It's in your best interest to play it out, but you may spend a resonance cycle with Yumi only being able to touch your opponent once, if at all. A lot of players recognize the dangers that lie in allowing for Yumi to find the hit, so most players will play very risk-averse and with as minimal interaction as possible, forcing her to approach. This especially applies if she's in resonance. It's best to wait out the 15 seconds until it's safer to fight her. As time progressed, Nanashi's lead grew stronger, until ultimately, Nanashi found the high 5P call they needed and emerged victorious as the Evo Japan 2025 champion, giving what has to be one of Lene's most notable victories in the entire history of BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. Nanashi, overflowing with happiness, achieved greatness. And the set that Nanashi and Midori played is representative of why I think this game is so cool. You have players like Nanashi, Midori, and many others who have dedicated years and thousands of hours poured into passion project teams that they believe they can make work. Then you also have players who are looking to play perfect BBTAG and have optimized their approach and composition centered around that ideal, to find perfection. You even have players who are students of the game and have a library of teams they rotate out utilizing character picks almost as mercenaries as opposed to teams, where you pick characters that best fit a situation. And you have a whole bunch of other players in between that are doing their own thing. And really, none of them are the right way to play BBTAG. There is no right way to play BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, aside from just playing the game in the first place. And that's what I'm thankful for. That we can have stacked tournaments in 2025, 7 years into the game's lifespan, and I can still walk away feeling impressed, and feeling like we haven't reached a natural conclusion of this scene yet. There are still more games of BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle to play. I made a video last year about the beautiful and bright BBTAG community, but this video is very much centered around the North American scene, mostly because it's my own scene, and that's the only region I can speak that in depth about. But the reality is, there's a beautiful and bright BBTAG world out there. I can only tell one side of the story. If you have interest in this game, I urge you to pay attention to all the regions that play it. And if you're anything like me, after witnessing what happened at KGP 2025 and Evo Japan 2025, I think it's time to save some money and take a trip to Japan to play some more BBTAG in 2026. It's not going anywhere, and the stories that this game could tell have not run dry yet. Long live BlazBlue, and thanks for watching.